Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, October 23rd at 7:03 p.m. And tonight we have a series of committee meetings. Two of our council members are not able to be with us tonight, so while we would usually have committee members stay at the dais, we'll just have everyone stay at the dais tonight. It's easier, and we'll go back to that when we have a full house. Our first item of business for the Committee of the Whole is two designations, one for a community reinvestment area and another one for tax increment financing. And these are both under consideration for passage for the Ridges area and the new Ridges Community Authority that's been established. Just by way of background information, you might remember that back in June, on June 15th, City Council passed both an ordinance and a resolution. The one ordinance was approving the petition to create the Ridges New Community Authority, and then the resolution that followed was for appointing the members of the Board of Trustees of the New Community Authority. That group met for the first time last week, and then we began discussing the next steps that are necessary for the redevelopment of that area to occur. The city's part in that would be considering legislation for a community reinvestment area and the tax increment financing. And I'll just give a little bit of background. I have some background tonight. I'm not as knowledgeable as Mr. Ritchie is, and he may be able to join us at a later meeting to describe further or if council members have questions. But the Community Reinvestment Area program is a direct incentive tax exemption program that benefits the owner who renovate existing or construct new buildings. And both of those things will be occurring on the Ridges, where there will be the renovation of some of the original structures, and then there will also be some new housing that will be going in if it works its way through the zoning code and the planning commission. So this program permits municipalities or counties to designate these areas. So council has received a copy of a proposed ordinance that describes the community reinvestment area. It would be for a period of up to 15 years, our particular one, and the other options were 12 or 10. I don't know if those were actually options because those are mainly for remodeling, but the 15 years is what is stated in our particular ordinance. And then we also work in tandem with the Ohio Department of Development. Earlier regulations used to be that the Ohio Department of Development you had to approve of the ordinances. It's now more a matter of informing the Ohio Department of Development as our progress is made and as the ordinance is passed. So we keep them apprised of the situation. The other one that I'll just mention now also is the tax incremental financing. And this is part of a state program in which real property tax exemption is granted with respect to the increment of increase in assessed valuation of certain parcels. So what happens is that the property owner makes payments in lieu of taxes. It's often referred to as pilot, payment in lieu of taxes. And then this money that is paid into that fund then is able to be used for improvements or other expenses that the new community authority may have in their development of the Ridges area. And so council members also have a copy then of the ordinance for the tax incremental financing on their drive. Both of these proposed ordinances have been reviewed by the Clerk of Council and also by the Law Director. And we might mention also that while we haven't dealt as often with the community reinvestment area, the city has two tax incremental finance programs that are operating, one of them being East State Street. And I think that was passed in 2012, and that's 2002. It's a 30-year program. And then the other one, which is not active yet, that has been approved just this past year, was for University Estates. And I think, Mr. Stone, I'll refer to you if you can describe how some of the money that's been used for the tax incremental financing, how it works for us on East State Street.
Sure. Thank you, President Isley. And I thought that your description was right on track with what these two programs are. The city doesn't have any community reinvestment areas to date. We do have the two tax increment financing districts that you mentioned. It's important to note that right now, the land in question that is being transferred to the new community authority pays no property taxes at all. And so any type of capture or deferment on these taxes are not harming anybody per se, because there are no taxes paid on those properties because it's currently state-owned property. The point of both of these programs is to try to get a development off the ground and use those future tax payments, property tax payments, to help get the development off the ground. The philosophy is that, or the theory is that if this weren't to occur, no improvement would be made at all, and those taxes would never be generated in the first place. And so it's not really a taking from anything. It's basically taking something that wouldn't exist otherwise and committing it to allow the development to get off the ground. To President Isley's question about the two that we have, the one that has been in place for a long time is on East State Street, and this was one that former Mayor Abel put in place and worked to put in place when we widened East State Street from 3 lanes to 5 lanes. It has a specific district, and that money, as it came in to the city, basically as the tax property tax value rose in that particular area, that valuation and the taxes that came in got diverted to a fund. A portion of that fund goes to the school district based on an agreement that the city struck with the school district at the time, and then the remainder goes into that fund. The fund was first used to service the debt that was floated to do the widening project. And then after that debt was retired, that fund has grown, and we've used it a couple times to improve infrastructure on East State Street. Most recently, the 2017 project, that was a complete repaving of the East State Street area and restriping, as well as improvements to the interchange at US 33 and East State, which is a pretty large project, and ultimately we used some of that revenue to help pay for the city's match on that project. And right now that's building again, and the fund can only be spent in that particular area. We intend to use that to help offset any local costs associated with a signal retiming project and signal equipment upgrade project that we've got slated for next year through an ODOT grant, and any city match will be funded by the TIF. And then beyond that, our intent right now is to allow that to grow basically until the end of the TIF period, where we'll use it for another resurfacing project of East State Street. Because by that point, looking in the early 2030s, we're probably to the point that 5-lane section that has more traffic than anywhere else in the city by more than double, it's going to need repaved again. So it's been a great tool in that particular area that's been used and has paid the city back to care for that infrastructure a couple times. The other one that's in place right now is at University Estates, and this body put it in place here really like a year and a half ago to help fund the Woods Edge housing townhouse project, and basically help fund the infrastructure. We all know that particular project is on hold due to some pretty significant inflationary pressures on construction costs at the moment, in concert with interest rates right now for construction loans. And so that's made it difficult for the developer to move forward. But if and when we're able to find a way to get that off the ground, then that TIF will go into effect there. And that money, in this case, will come to the city, and then will be used to pay back the developers so they can service their debt on the infrastructure for that particular project. So those are the two that we have in place right now. We are familiar with how these work.
And as an economic incentive, I've heard the comment made that some of the development that has happened along East State Street likely wouldn't have happened without that plan in place. So we're hoping that the same kind of economic advancement works for the Ridges area. Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. Mr. Stone, the East State Street TIF boundaries, east and west, is it the interchange on the western side, or Home Street perhaps? And what is it on the other?
Right. It's functionally the 5-lane portion. So if you can imagine the 5-lane portion, that's basically what it is. It's pretty much the interchange to where it necks back to 3 lanes.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions about the
Oh,
TIF?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
It also covers the bike path area. So it covers those parcels and East State Street proper and the parcels to the south, including the parcels that have the bikeway from the wastewater treatment plant out to, functionally Lowe's or a little bit past Lowe's.
Thank you.
So we can use it to repave that section of bike path, which we intend to do next year.
Excellent.
Any other questions? Well, you have time to further review the documents, look at the maps that were available. I think that I think it may be the community reinvestment area does require a housing survey, and that has been completed. Has been part of the documents for the ridges, and that's been recently completed, so that's available. Councilmember Skilnes.
I guess maybe you just answered my question, but I guess because so many people are interested in the progress of this, and I don't want to take up a lot of time, but if you can give us a thumbnail sketch of where we're at with getting designs and all that kind of stuff done.
We're not to the point of getting designs yet. I do know that it is overall, for the view from 30,000 feet is that overall it's going to be a 10-year plan for the redevelopment of the area, that there will, I believe, need to be some new construction that generates money so that then can generate money to be able to do some of the repairs to begin the renovations on the ridges, the original buildings in the main area of the main buildings where they're intending senior housing. And actually it's more than senior housing, it's senior housing, art student, live workspace, and so then that will happen at a later date. Service Director Stone, Mayor Patterson, and then if you all have any information beyond that on the plans for the ridges, but we at the Community Authority are just looking at the basic documents right now, what we need to have in place. So obviously the TIF and the community reinvestment area are vital to getting towards our next steps. Mayor and Service Director Stone.
So just to dovetail onto what you just mentioned, President Isley. So the developer has indicated to me, and I think when he comes, we probably ought to prep him to share, progress on design and planning for the actual places, right, that people are going to live. Mm-hmm. But that they're going to work on the first set designs and then getting those cleared concurrent with the effort to get the property transferred from the state, so that possibly next spring we could have some approvals on zoning coming through that particular area, and any subdivisions or any other city steps through planning commission and council that have to take place. And so, we'd like to see them going as early as next year if they're able to pull everything together. They're under the same pressures for construction cost inflation and financing as every other contractor is, but I'm hopeful, and I think if we keep knocking down some of these gates, that we'll be able to see some work happening, in the next couple of years.
Okay, Mayor, did you have any other?
Just something I think is important for council to understand. If you look at the document that references the CRA, under section 7, Roman numeral 7. It speaks to Athens City Code, or actually ORC, Tax Incentive Review Council. So I just mentioned that so that you have some sense as to the oversight for expenditures within both the CRA. It applies to the TIF as well. I've sat on the Turk, what we call it, meetings with Auditor Hecht, as well as Molly Fitzgerald, the director for the Athens County EDC, and the county auditor sits in on those for auditing purposes for the TIF, but the CRA will have that same level of oversight to where anyone accessing those funding from an accountancy standpoint, it has to go to me and the auditor, and then we bring that forward annually at the annual Turk meetings. So just wanted to lay that out there. The other thing is that since it's a 30-year TIF, so changing the, it's acronym solid here. Under the TIF, this will go to the Athens City School District for approval, but unlike the TIF on East State Street, to where there was the allocation of the property taxes that were going to those who received an apportionment of those, as Director Stone already indicated, the state property has been tax-free and will continue to be tax-free. At the end of that 30-year TIF, the school district will be made whole with all of the reevaluated or reassessed property values of the ridges. But again, it's a great tool to use, especially in this case where these are non-tax bearing properties, property tax bearing properties at this point in time. But just know that there's still multiple steps that have to be gone through with the CRA and with the TIF. And again, I wanted to mention the Turk oversight, just so you guys had some sense as to how that's managed.
Councilmember Spelman, did you have another question?
Just real quick, remind everyone how much housing is planned once it's done.
Potentially.
Yeah.
It could be as many as 700 housing units. Now that is condominiums to freestanding, potentially duplexes or other housing units up there, but I'll take 700 housing units in the city of Athens any day, especially
and then
now.
That would be that artisan live work space probably
It would.
also, yeah. Any questions from our audience? If not, we'll look forward to seeing the ordinances then at next Monday night's business meeting. Now move on to Finance and Personnel Committee, chaired by Councilmember Crowell, with Councilmembers Reisner, Ziff, and Spielness.
Thank you, President Isley. We have a number of items on our agenda tonight, starting with 2024 staffing. There is a request from the President of Council, I guess, to move a council position, a government channel position, to permanent part-time. And this is a position with an experienced staff member currently in the position, and this would be a pay grade 2, I believe, position. And that is the, you're able to turn your head and look at our, it is the production specialist there under the general fund 101.105. And as you can see there, it is a 0.73 full-time equivalent position. I'll go ahead and go through all of these changes, and then we can open it up for questions afterwards. Other staffing changes, we've had numerous discussions. City administration has expressed their plan to have a new position in the code department. This is an assistant director of development enforcement, really an assistant director of the code department. This position would do code inspections. So we've talked about the need for additional hands in the code department to be able to inspect all of our properties, and in particular our rental properties. And this position would be, part of its role would be to do inspections. There's also an eye towards the future, which is, I believe, why this title of development enforcement was used, in that the city would be looking at a buildings department in the future, and this position would be able to make some plans towards that eventuality. And this also will help transition in the department as leadership decides to move on. This position would be help with the continuity of the department in terms of sort of succession planning. This will be a pay grade 8, I believe, like the other assistant directors in the city. And you can see it there in the code 101.351. Then there are a number of sort of renaming of positions and some shuffling of positions within EPW. This is, the new titles are project assistant and project inspector. But if you look through the sort of pages 23, 24, you'll see the different sort of roles that they will sort of take on, from instrument technician and construction coordinator. We will have these 2 positions of project assistant and project inspector. As the city administration works with getting the EPW department sort of fully up and going, they would like to have these positions as soon as possible, I would imagine, Director Stone. So those are the EPW positions. And then finally, or not quite finally, but in Arts, Parks, and Recreation, we've also discussed a sort of adjustment of positions within that department. There would be a return of 3 program specialists, and they would be designated program specialists for Arts, Parks, and Recreation, a program specialist for just arts, or I guess it's really a program specialist for recreation, program specialist for arts, and then a program specialist that focuses on child care. The recreation and the arts positions would be funded from both 270 and 271, so both the Recreation Fund and the Community Center Operations Fund. And the child care program specialist would be solely from the Community Center Operations Fund. And city administration, I will give you a chance to chime in here, make sure I've got everything correct. And then finally, in the seasonal employees, as part of the staffing ordinance, you will see that there's a bit of an adjustment. There is a removal of the pool manager position. There is a sort of simplification of lifeguards, which do swim instruction. So there's no need for the sort of swim instructor designation. And then with one of the Arts, Parks, and Recreation program specialists taking on the seasonal pool management role, there will be a lead lifeguard, a head pool attendant, and a lead pool attendant. And then instead of the cashiers, there will be pool attendants. And why don't we just start there, Director Stone? Is there something more you want to add about the Arts, Parks, and Recreation, or is that, or Mayor?
Councilmember Crowell, you should be president of council someday. No, you hit everything perfectly. I don't think there's anything that Director Stone or I can add to your summary of the staffing ordinance.
Thank you. I listen well and take good notes. Yes, Director Stone.
I don't need to add anything, but I will just add emphasis specifically. Many of these are nomenclature changes, and what we found, and just to kind of give some color commentary to the request, on Arts, Parks, and Recreation, we've gone a couple of years now with a very complicated pool with a turnover in pool manager. And it's going to happen again. And so what we found is, while it seemed to make sense in the old model to have a pool manager that was a 6-month employee, it just doesn't make sense for this. And so the deal that I've struck is we'll add back that child care specialist so you can take the child care duties away from the recreation program specialist, and then subsequently that recreation program specialist owns the pool. And you've got that continuity, gains an aquatic certification, aquatic facility certification officer certification from the state of Ohio and then has that perpetually and owns it, so that I have that continuity from year to year. To add on to your point about engineering public works, these are some changes that Solly, the city engineer, has requested, and he'd like to get those posted and on the street. Both of those have been vacant for a while, even in their current iteration. And we are really having a crunch in EPW in our ability to manage the multi-million-dollar projects that we've got across the board. I'd like if you would consider suspending. If you suspend it all, that'd be great. If you don't, and that would help us for budget planning. If you don't want to do that, I'd at least ask that you would suspend those two and pass those so we can get those on the street and get them hired, and not have to wait until after January.
Thank you, Director Stone. And remind me, are the three program specialists within Arts, Parks, and Recreation filled positions at the moment, or is there one? No, they're all three filled.
No. One doesn't exist right now. It existed before the pandemic, and then when we stopped doing childcare, we basically removed that position from the staffing ordinance after we laid the person off, and then ultimately decided to go back with less. Our revenue was down and such, and so this is basically a request to go back to what we had before, and then adjust kind of that structure as I described. So there's only two program specialists at the moment: the arts program specialist and the Parks and Rec program specialist. That's also happening to cover a lot of child care duties.
Great, thank you. I'll open it up to the committee. Are there any questions about the staffing ordinance? Yes, Member Spielness.
Thank you. It sounds good. I'm curious about two things. One is the Arts West. As you know, I represent the west side, and there's some curiosity about what's happening with Arts West, and I'm wondering if any of these changes have anything to do with how Arts West will be managed, programs, et cetera, in the future. So that's one question.
Okay, can we start on that one?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we now have a new, I think you may have known that our former arts program specialist stepped away and went on to pursue other things from the city, and so we just got that position filled. The gentleman we're very excited about, his name's Adam West. We might have hired Batman, I'm saying. And he also happens to be a former paratrooper, so he must be a good guy, because all those guys are great. So now that he's in the seat and he's kind of getting up to speed, we anticipate the programming in the Arts West building, increasing as he's there. I think we do have a building supervisor assigned to keep Arts West open during the times that needs to be open for access for the various activities that are going there now. And then I think Adam, and don't quote me on this, but I think Adam will work out of that 2 days a week out of that building and work out of the community center 3 days a week. So we're really excited about the work that Adam's going to do.
Great. Okay, so my next question is a little bit more about this new code person. Sounds promising, but I'd really like to hear a little bit more.
Sure. So you made the point when we were talking about fees, about increasing rental rates. The dollar figure we settled on will more than pay for an additional position. So we should be able to cover that cost of adding this additional position. The intent would be that this assistant director, and we said assistant director of development enforcement. When it's on here, it really should probably have a slash in between development and enforcement, because it's assistant director of development and enforcement. And so some new development, some enforcement. But we anticipate this person being able to conduct inspections and basically back up all the code inspectors for that work. The other thing that this will allow in the future, so there'll be an extra person basically to cover inspections, and there's always a need to be able to cover more inspections. On top of that, it's been a goal for a long time for us to establish a building department. And under state law, Ohio has a commercial building code and a residential building code. If a local community doesn't have a local certified building department, and that certification comes from the Ohio Department of Commerce, the state is compelled to do all the commercial building plan review and inspection. Nobody is compelled to do the residential. And there's a significant amount of time lost for local builders and local the local business community when they do commercial sites, and they're also sending all their money to the state. And so it's been a goal of ours for a long time to establish a local building department. I've been told that Athens is the largest community in the state without a local building department. So, but the steps to do that are pretty challenging. You have to have a chief building official that's an employee, and our goal would be to make the code director also the chief building official. And then you have to have inspectors that carry certain certifications for both plan review and site inspection. And so what we probably would do, the model that we've discussed, is to have a chief building official who's a employee, because you have to have that, and then contract out the plan review and inspection for a period of time as we do that, and set our rates basically so that you can cover our costs with those plans, and instead of sending the money to the state. If we make the code director the chief building official, that is going to take away from their ability to do everything they're doing now. And so the thought would be that this assistant director would allow for some of those duties to be shifted. Lastly, our code director is extremely qualified right now. The credentials that he carries are well beyond what we should expect to be able to hire in that position, and we just got lucky because he wanted to move back to his farm in Meigs County and keep working, but he's not going to work forever. Also, a code director tends to be how do I say this? Tends to be a target when a mayor administration changes, if you look at the last several. And so I don't know that, I think we need to plan for some continuity in that department, and this assistant director position will give some continuity to that department when we in the future change code directors, whether through retirement or other reasons.
Thank you for your excellent explanation, and I'm excited to hear about it. Thank you.
Other comments from the committee? Any comments from other council members? Yes, Member McCary.
Thank you. This question is for our mayor. He might anticipate this one from me, but I'm wondering if you are anticipating any changes to the title or scope of our DEI training coordinator position in preparation for the new calendar year.
Councilmember Carey, I really appreciate the question. In time, as I think our DEI coordinator will continue to serve internally, but we're also seeing that there's this opportunity for Lacey Rogers to be more public facing as well in different endeavors. So at some point, it won't be in 2024. It will hopefully be in future years, whether it's 2025 or further out. I do see a need for within the HR department, because that's currently where our DEI coordinator is housed, to see that I can see some expansion within that department, but it's going to take us a while. It won't happen next year for sure, but I'm very open and have been very transparent about Lacey Rogers being more public facing and getting engaged in a number of different councils and commissions that exist already, the Public Relations Committee or the Community Relations Committee, but also working closely with Athens County Racial Equity Coalition, as you're aware. So as things evolve, I can see coming to council in the future. I just don't know. I can't put a time frame on that at this point in time.
Thank you. I think my follow-up question would be, given the near end of our contract date with the National League of Cities, which has been coordinating or preparing us to coordinate our trainings for employees, that comes to an end perhaps in the next couple of months. And if the focus is, or if there's not as much time needed for staff training, where do you see that time shifting for the upcoming calendar year?
Well, there's still a lot of work to be done, because Lacey Rogers is going through the Train the Trainer program right now, as is the director of HR, Ron Lucas, is going through that training also. And it's always been our plan that as we're onboarding new employees, that we'll put them through the normalizing training as they have been trained. So we have continuity with new hires, that this is what's expected of you, this is your recognition of systemic racism and what racial equity means. So as I really don't see at this point in time any freeing up of Lacey Rogers' time. And, you know, because if we did, then it's a whole different conversation about expanding any assistance under the DEI component of HR. But instead, I see with Lacey's involvement with other commissions that, you know, again, in the near future, hoping that we can, you know, look to add someone who could be working directly with or for Lacey moving forward.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other members of council? Excellent. Anything, members of the public? Okay, so we will move on to appropriations. We have an $80,000 appropriation for the wastewater treatment plant. In June of this year, our electricity rates increased, and it's hopeful that we don't need all of this $80,000, but it is estimated that up to this amount will be needed for the wastewater treatment plant through the end of the year. Are there any questions from the committee on this appropriation for electric? Anything to add, city administration?
We'll turn back in any that we don't use to the unappropriated balance at the end.
Excellent, thank you. Any comments from the public? Okay, the next item is transfer. You may be aware that the extension from Harold Avenue through to West State Street is underway. That project has started and goes right by the current bus garage. HABCAP will be building a new West State Street bus garage, and they are looking for the final amount that they need to complete their capital stack for that project. The city administration is recommending that the city provide $100,000, which is the transfer on the agenda tonight. And some of the reasons for this is that the city will actually own the building. The streets department, which is headquartered just less than 100 yards from the bus garage, will be using the building to wash city equipment. And there's also a local match requirement. So the city administration is requesting this transfer now, even though the money may not be needed immediately. Looking for the transfer now to show HABCAP that we do support this new construction, and they are able to solidify their planning for the funding. And so the city administration is requesting that we make this funding transfer now. This would be from streets to 20 to our capital fund. Are there any questions from the committee member about the $100,000 for the HABCAP bus? Other members of council, Member Reisner.
Are there any plans developed yet for this new garage?
They've gone through a couple iterations for the designs of the new.
I mean, is it going to be bigger or anything?
It'll be bigger.
Okay.
It needs to grow, quite
Right,
honestly. I
right.
mean, that's the whole intent behind this. So it'll grow. It's worth also mentioning that one of the things that we have been working with HABCAP on this bus facility is that they have a wash rack. I don't know if any of you got the opportunity when they had the ribbon cutting over at ODOT's garage, maintenance garage. They have this impressive wash rack that all salt trucks and other vehicles during the winter and probably year-round, as they're coming back and they need to be cleaned, this will do an undercarriage wash, which is important to extend the life of your vehicles, especially if they're salt trucks. HABCAP would be putting such a rack within the maintenance garage, and then there will be an agreement with the city being able to run our salt trucks or other vehicles that are out during the winter months, which will certainly benefit the city in the long run with the extended life of the chassis and the undercarriage of the vehicles.
And I'll just note that all of the drainage for the salt wash, as well as the suds for washing the vehicles, will go through the sanitary sewer, so it will go to the wastewater treatment plant and not directly into the storm sewer. Mayor?
No, and I'm glad you brought that up. And the reason that we're able to do that is because it's an indoor facility.
Thank you. Other questions from other council members? Other members of any members of the public?
I'm Rob Delac, live on Morris Avenue here in the city, just representing myself. I'm just curious, one detail, is it a scrape and replace of the current garage, or is this another facility that's being built and they'll be both being used, or what's the story on that?
Director Stone?
I can speak to that. So the existing facility is a city-owned building that currently is basically part of the agreement with HAPCAP. When they operate the transit system for the city, they get to use that city-owned building to care for the fleet. HAPCAP's operations and the transit operation in general is outgrowing it. So that'll return back to the city and it will be removed. There's always a demand for indoor storage of equipment. There's not enough indoor storage of equipment right now. And so the thought would be that that would allow for more large pieces of equipment to be stored indoors.
Sounds good, thanks.
Other questions from the public? Okay, thank you. Moving on, the next item on our agenda is a reduction of 2023 year-end appropriations. This is an annual request from the auditor's office in order to, make the budget numbers work. They look at the overall spreadsheet and then reduce the year-end appropriations. I don't see the auditor here tonight, so she can't answer questions, but perhaps others can. Are there any questions from the committee?
Don't know much.
It's okay. Mayor, would you like to add?
We do this every year, and it's the way in which, when we know that there isn't going to be expenses in certain lines, then we sit there and draw them down. So it's just how we ensure that we have a proper carryover as we're budgeting into 2024. So this goes on every single year.
This is the 10th time I've been through it.
You've only been here 10 years?
Yeah.
Other members of council? Members of the public? Thank you, President Isley. That ends finance and personnel.
Thank you. We'll now move on to transportation, where Councilmember Reisner chairs this and is joined by Councilmember Ziff.
Thank you, Madam President. There's only one item under Transportation Committee, a leafer truck purchase. From what I understand with my communication with Director Stone, is that our current leaf truck is pretty much worn out. It's time to replace it, and apparently a vendor has come along with I guess a pretty good deal to get a new one, and we should take advantage of it while we can. So if you want to add some details to that.
Sure. Thank you, Member Reisner. So this is a target of opportunity. And I've eschewed buying new leaf vac trucks over the last decade. And I probably shouldn't have. I probably should have bought them, but it seems when you do something for 8-10 weeks a year and then it sits in a garage the rest of the year, it's you tend to say, we'll live it along a little bit longer. There are currently 2 large vac trucks that are dedicated trucks that the city has, and then 2 dump trucks that get a small unit inserted into the back. And so ultimately we can run 4 units, and when all the leaves are falling, we need every single one of them to be able to operate, to collect and get the streets clean and get people's yards cleaned out and everything. A vendor that we've worked with on other trucks in the past has come along and said, hey, we've got some units. And they are part of Sourcewell, which is the collective purchasing agreement that the city joined. So it allows us to avoid the bidding process, basically, that's pre-bid, and that's already done. And so they have one unit for about $260,000, which seems to be a pretty good price for one of these units. And if we were to order one, it would probably be a couple of years in production. And so I'm asking you to appropriate and authorize the expenditure for this. Part of the legislation that will come forward will be the disposal of the old one. The old one has a number of different parts attached to it from different eras, but I did confirm that the truck itself is a 1977 model. So I don't have historic plates for it, but it probably should have them. And it every year it catches on fire a couple times, and it's time to be replaced. And we just have this opportunity, so I'm asking you, number one, to allow for disposal of the old one, and they'll take it on trade. I don't know what they're gonna do with it, but they'll take it on trade, probably put it in a museum, and then, appropriate and authorize the expenditure for the new one. And I would like this expedited as well, simply because the leaves are falling. There was a frost last night.
Mr. Mayor?
I'd just like to add, aside from the historic relevance of that truck, that as I've been going door to door, especially now, I hear from a lot of people who told me, as they were raking their leaves to the curb, how important having a vehicle of that nature that's going around. So while it's only used seasonally, it's run hard during that season because there's 3 different areas in the city. It goes around and sends services a week and then rotates to the next area. So between October 16th and near the holiday well into the holiday season of December, I think it's December 20th or something like that, or 22nd, that leaf truck is out there running all day long and doing what I believe to be a great service for our community, to where they know they can rig their leaves to the curb. They know the leaf truck during that time frame that they're going to be in their neighborhoods, that the leaf truck is picking them up. So, I mean, in my opinion, it's a vital service that a lot of people in the city of Athens have become very accustomed to. So I just want to put that exclamation mark on a seasonal vehicle to where I think this expenditure is warranted. And who knows, maybe we'll have this one until 2053 or something like that.
How soon can the vehicle be delivered?
Well, I asked, I know I can't sign the paper until this body authorizes
Right.
and appropriates the money, but I asked if we could like rent it in the interim and like have that money taken off of the purchase price, just so we can get it here. You know, they have it on the lot, it's just a matter of delivery.
So if we introduce an ordinance on Monday and suspend the rules?
That would be wonderful. Well, of course, Monday is fifth Monday, so it'd have to be
Right.
the 6th.
You know, next time we meet.
Right.
I mean, we could have an emergency session. I'm sure everybody would be happy to
think-
do that, right?
I think-
Careful.
Right?
The vendor wants to make the sale, so I think they'll work with us.
Okay. Well, as soon as the opportunity arises, we'll suspend the rules.
Thank you.
See what happens. Any questions from the committee? Members of council, Member Ziff.
Thank you. Just one, correct me if I'm wrong, Director Stone, but don't some of these leaves get taken to the different community gardens around the city?
They do.
I believe they do, yeah. I wanted to make sure before I open my mouth, but just to dissuade anyone from thinking they take all these leaves and none of them ever get used for anything good. That's entirely not true. As someone who runs with my mom 5 plots in the East Side Community Garden, these leaves are awesome, and all the ones, as many as that get dumped over in the gardens, all get used. All of them. Our giant pile is already gone on the east side. We ate them all up. Well, we put them in the ground. We didn't. I guess technically we'll eat them eventually. But yeah, so, as usual, a little bit of positivity. Hooray, go leaves.
And soon you'll have Sills Park muck that you can go after as well.
Ooh.
Member Crow.
I believe this will come from Streets Fund, as will the Habcap Bus Garage, but the Streets Fund, I believe, is in pretty good shape. Is that correct, and can handle these?
I think so.
Great, thank you.
Member McCary.
Thank you. I understand that although the vehicle itself is quite old, from the 70s, that there are components that were attached that were perhaps newer, and I'm just wondering how much the technology has changed. Is it such that it's less likely to catch on fire now?
To answer your question, I mean, I say that somewhat in jest, but it's true. It does happen, and a lot of it has to do with, you're collecting a bunch of dry, flammable material that has holes, rust in the metal. Some of that material can get out and get up against hot parts of the motor and then combust, basically. I think the design is different now. The likelihood of that happening and getting in contact with the hot parts of the motor is much lower.
Any other questions from council? Citizens? No? Well, I guess that's all.
Thank
Thank
you. Councilmember Reisner. We'll now move on to City and Safety Services, chaired by Councilmember McCary and joined by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Nisley. I believe our committee meeting will be brief with just one agenda item as well, and that is with regard to our council's need to process an easement for our Simpson Avenue Fire Station headquarters. It's my understanding that we don't yet have the easement drafted, but that's something that we would want for our meeting in 2 weeks. And I'll ask Director Stone if he has anything to add.
Thank you, Member Carey. There are 2 easements. Ultimately, one is from American Electric Power. I do have that one ready to go and forwarded on. I do not have the one yet from Columbia Gas of Ohio, and these are both to support the new building. Just a couple points of additional information on that. The electric service is a much larger service than typically we would need for this building, and the reason that we're doing that is to have those 4 fast charge level 3 NEVI ready chargers in the parking lot for public use. We went ahead and have that planned in, and our goal is to apply for NEVI funding to get that cost associated with that reimbursed. We just haven't done that yet because it's not in place. The gas is actually a gas line that exists currently, and Columbia Gas does not hold an easement for it. When that particular area was a railroad, they had ownership of it by license, but then the railroad sold to Ohio University in the ensuing years and change of people. They actually, so they don't have an easement for their current line, but we need service to the new building. And so they've asked for us to go ahead and grant them an easement. We're working through what the right language is in that to protect the city. And then they also, will give new service without payment. I mean, there will be payment for the gas, but the construction cost of new service will be no cost to the city to connect to the new building.
Thank you. And please correct my understanding or assumption, is the gas currently by Sonic? Is that what we'd be accessing and extending over to the fire station?
Actually, it runs right behind Bulliana and down the old railroad right-of-way. Okay. So there's a gas line in there, and that was what I was mentioning. That was so it runs north-south following the old railway path. So there is one by Sonic, but it crosses Stimson and continues to further, northeast.
Thank you. Questions from committee members and other members of council? Any other comments from administration? Audience? Okay, that concludes City and Safety Services.
Thank you, Councilmember McCary. We'll now move on to Planning and Development, and Councilmember Crowell will chair this tonight for Councilmember Grace, and joined by Councilmembers McCary and Spielness.
Thank you, President Isley. There is one item on our agenda tonight, along with other boards and commissions, a city administration and president of council initiative for boards and commissions to sort of create standardized bylaws. The Environment and Sustainability Commission for the past several months has been working under Chair Amy DeLocke to rewrite, really to create bylaws for the Environment and Sustainability Commission. And in that process, there were a few discrepancies between what was proposed for the bylaws and what actually exists in city code. And one of the items was, the only item under consideration here, is how a voting member gets kicked off of the commission. The municipal code reads, a member who misses 3 consecutive meetings without an excused absence shall automatically cease to be a member and their seat shall become vacant. The Environment and Sustainability Commission proposed that this instead read, if a voting member misses 3 unexcused consecutive meetings during the year, the commission may request the resignation of that member and petition city council to declare a vacancy. So that is the proposed change to make the bylaws and the city code say the same thing, which is always good. Any questions from Sarah Grace's committee? Yes, Member Spielness.
I must say it's pretty generous, really. I guess I'm a little bit puzzled that it's that generous. It seems like there aren't that many committee meetings in the year. So I think you've sort of self-selected out if you don't show up for 3 meetings in a row. But whatever. I understand it has to meet with code and whatever that has to do.
Part of the conversation, to fill you in, is that we haven't had any, in the time that I've been on the commission, any problems with that. So it almost seemed unnecessarily harsh. We have had some members who were having having babies, and that caused some absences. But of course, those were excused by the chair. So we came up with that solution, which we thought maybe was more in line, but
Is this in line with city code? I mean, is that what's been substituted for the original language is what, ACC 307-74?
so we are proposing that city code be changed to meet what the commission bylaws say.
Shouldn't it be the other way around? I mean,
It just has to match.
well, I know that, but I mean, you have city code at the top, and then everything else permeates down from there, rather than permeating up to change the code to match the bylaws.
That's an excellent point, but I would just say that I'm not sure when the city code was written, and there was robust discussion within the last few months of what the commission felt was the appropriate language. So whether it came through as a recommendation to change city code first, and then the bylaws were created to match city code.
So if we change city code to this, then does that mean all other bylaws will have to be changed, and all the other committees and boards?
This is specific to the Environment and Sustainability Commission.
And each commission,
Well, I
Of the
understand
ones
each
that
commission
actually
has its
have
own
their
bylaws,
bylaws.
but ultimately it's council who says you can have a commission, that you can have a board, that you can have bylaws, right?
it depends. Some of them are governed by city council, some of them are governed by the mayor's office, some of the commissions. And you're right that city council is the one that determines the code, but I would say that just as we say that code sometimes needs to be changed to add feather flags, or sometimes we've changed code to say, you know what, litter includes graffiti, and sometimes we've changed code because other things like circuses, there was something about a circus animal in city code, and so there come times when they change. As I understand the process, and this was initiated by the mayor, the law director, and myself, we met with the commissions and we said, we need you to take a look at your bylaws. Our interest is in standardizing them as much as we can, but not in making some kind of executive decision that all of them had to be absolutely word for word the same. So this removal from a commission membership can be customized for the Environmental and Sustainability Commission, because they took a vote on it and they said, here are our new bylaws. They've spent a lot of time discussing them and researching them, and made a decision that they think this is a more reasonable way of being able to ask somebody to, if they want to remain on the commission or leave. I don't know if that offers a reasonable explanation, but.
No,
Yeah. Shade Tree Commission.
It's reasonable. I'm not convinced, but I'm,
Okay.
I admire your argument, so.
I do too. You should think about being president of the city council. Or maybe mayor, I don't know, can we have a? Well said, thank you.
State
Yes,
Representative.
Member McCary?
Thank you. Checking for clarification, based on this change, if a member who missed 3 meetings that were unexcused and was asked or invited to resign was not inclined to resign, then it would be council that would overrule and declare there a vacancy.
That's the way I understand it, that we can request that, or the commission may request the resignation and petition city council to declare a vacancy. So if that member said no, then the petition could still come to city council, and city council could say, yeah, sorry, but you are removed.
Thank you.
Your understanding, President?
I think the mayor has it.
Yes, Mayor?
I just wanted to lend a voice to some of this conversation. All of the different boards and commissions that I belong to, and there's a lot of them, this is pretty standard, to where if you have 3 unexcused absences that are consecutive, that you can be removed. What often happens is when an individual has 3 unexcused, they typically declare their own resignation from that board because they for whatever reason. So this is pretty standard when you look at various boards and commissions. that aren't necessarily governmental in nature, or even volunteer-based governmental.
Other comments or questions? Yes, Member Ziff.
Thank you. I was just gonna, because we were talking about, sort of just to throw this in very last minute, haphazardly, we were talking about the idea of amusing things being found in code. One that I was trying to remember was 9.06.06, and it's the sale or gift of liquor on election day. And no person shall sell or give away intoxicating liquor on any election day between 6 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. So I just think that's kind of hilarious because just a random thing to throw out there. I know I was
you,
drinking
Member
at the last election.
Other questions from the public?
I need it most.
All right, that ends, I guess, our meeting tonight.
I think it does, at 8:03, 1 hour on the minute. And thank you all so much for being here. We'll see you next on November 6th.